Hello, as all of you guys start to join us from the waiting room. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is our 2-year anniversary with BIMxt. So thank you all for joining us today, and thank you especially for our presenters for our wonderful meeting today on tips. Very excited to hear all of the tips that we have today, not only from our presenters, but from you, our participants as well. As always, as you can see on my screen, we have our mural. Please feel free to get into our mural and share really quickly. I know that you guys last few months at the very least have been hearing me tell you guys how to use mural. We have it broken down by discipline. So you can see here, we have little icons that kind of show you each discipline, right? So Kate, she would want to grab one with the column, right? Because she's structurally aligned, or maybe she wants to align with me, with BIM, grab the laptop, right? So you can kind of see there, we do have them annotated over on the left in terms of which group is which. Essentially, because I'm BIM, I'm going to take that note, right click on it and duplicate it. Then I can bring that over here and start to put in where I am located and my name. We do give a gift card to a participant every meeting. Oh, look at that. I can't even type my name in. And last month, our special winner is Daniel Kirby. Congrats. You have won a $25 gift card. And Allison, most likely, or someone from CAD Micro will be contacting you to give you that gift card. Today, we actually have a special prize to give away to a participant with a tip. So make sure that you share not only your location for a chance to win the $25 gift card next month, but also that you share a tip with us. We will be giving away a Dell laptop today. So make sure you share your tip, your favorite tip, and the best tip will be getting a laptop. So definitely a really cool one. So congratulations to you in advance and happy birthday, BIMxt. Without further ado, we have 3 awesome presenters today. First up, we have Kate Morrical. For you guys who do not know her, she's been an avid participant within the Revit DC group. I'm always excited to have her as a presenter, share her tips with us. She's going to be giving us a tip with a tip. Then we're going to have Brian Mackey and Donnia Tabor-Hanson. You guys probably know them from the Twitter or LinkedIn at the very least, very active in conferences and other things. So very excited to see the tips that they have for us today. So without further ado, please make sure you get into the mural. You can see there that Allison has shared the link. We'll make sure to share that for those of you guys who are joining in a little late. But go ahead and jump over to Kate. How are you doing, Kate?
I am doing well. I can't imagine that it's been 2 years already.
Crazy, right? 2 years of virtual user groups. I know. Time flies.
Oh, and I'm glad to be here today because I absolutely love tips. They are some of my favorite Revit topics because sometimes I don't have the best attention span and they're short and sweet and to the point, and you can put them to use as soon as you get back to the office. So I guess I can share my screen for the mural here.
Yes, please.
Okay. Let's go. Got it. And, all right, we're all here. And see, I think I'm very sad because I'm pretty sure my tip is not eligible as one of the ones to win the laptop. So you all better.
We can vote her up.
I have good tips here. And the thing I would say about tips, you probably all know this already, but I always start my tips presentations with this. You all may know these tips. I guarantee you somebody you work with, either in your office or a client or consultant, somebody you work with doesn't know it. So it's my pitch for being a tip evangelist. And my tip for today is 3 tips in 1 because I couldn't resist. We talk a lot about managing who is syncing a Revit model. How do I know if somebody else is actively engaging with the central file? Am I going to bother any data? So we've got 3 ways to handle that here. If your model is on your server still, on a local server, there is the work sharing monitor. Fire this up and it will show you who's in the model and what they're actually doing with it here. And apparently Morgan B needs a talking to because they are working directly in the central file. Work sharing monitor is an a separate installation for earlier versions. I believe it's included in the later versions of Revit. So that works if you're on a server. If you are on BIM 360 or the Autodesk Construction Cloud, you don't get quite as much information as you do from the server, but there's this little icon hiding down here in the middle of your status bar that most of the time looks like a green cube. But if someone is actively synchronizing with the model, it'll turn to this little red arrow. And then if you hover over that arrow, it will tell you who it is. So when it turns back to green, you're good to go. And lastly, kind of related, if you just want to know who's in your model, who else am I going to mess up if I do something right now? Like, do I need to, if I'm trying to recreate the central file, or I'm trying to figure out just who owns something. This works if you're in BIM 360 or if you're on a server file. Fire up that work sets dialog next to our little sync activity monitor, and then check all the boxes down here. Then you can sort by owner or borrower and get a list of who else is in the model. Now I'll tell you, this isn't foolproof. If somebody just has it open, but they haven't done anything yet, they're not going to show up here. But if you need to know who else you want to talk to, that's the way to do it. And that is my 2-minute tip.
I did not know that. Did you guys know that? That is such an amazing tip. I will say I'm not actively syncing on a regular basis, but that's definitely what I'm going to share around Smith Group, and hopefully you guys will as well.
Yeah, and hopefully you don't see multiple users syncing at the same time when you hover over the cube, which quite often happens. That would
be bad news. Yeah, for sure. Well, hopefully now people know about it, and we'll cut down on that happening. Right?
Exactly.
Well, without further ado, Brian, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for joining us.
I feel bad because this is your guys' two-year birthday, and this is the first time I've been on. So I feel like I've been a slacker for the last 2 years.
Well, first time for many, right?
Yes, probably true.
It'll be on the calendar from now on. Well, I'm very excited to have you present at BIMxt as your first time being here. That's pretty incredible. And for those of you guys who did not know Brian, as I mentioned before, he's pretty regular. You guys may have seen his conference speeches on AU or BILT on their websites at the very least. And this year, Brian, you'll be at BILT, correct? We'll be there together.
That is correct. I'm actually presenting Revit tips there as well. So I'll officially have a handout at least there. So
there you go. So we get the mock-up to that. Lucky
exactly.
Us.
So if there's anything terrible in here, somebody says that's wrong, it's not true anymore, I can fix it before then.
And who knows, maybe the laptop winner could get a slide on Brian's BILT presentation. You have an amazing tip to share.
There you go. So I'm going to actually start off by tag teaming onto Kate. So the one thing I want to tag team onto Kate's for that, and it just popped into my head when she was doing it, is I don't think everybody understands that when you're actually synchronizing, it does a local save and then it does a reload latest. So personally for me, I save locally, then I do a reload latest. And the reason why I do that is if I do that, I'm not going to get my synchronization interrupted by somebody who'd sync at that time. So you've all been there, especially if you're on BIM 360, you see reload latest ×4, reload latest ×5, because 4 or 5 other users have come in and synced over you. So if you do save local and you do a reload latest, then when you go to do the synchronization, it'll actually speed that process up for everybody. That's my other little tip. Works really, really well when you jump into multiple users.
Yeah, I feel like usually the time where I actually give that recommendation is when the sync fails for whatever reason.
Yeah,
right? That's a nice one to dole out.
Yeah, it's like, So I'm going to jump in with a few dimensioning tips, because I don't think we all have to dimension. And this is one that every time I do it, people are like, oh my God, I had no idea you could do that. I actually laughed. It was back in, I think it was Built Europe in like 2013. I did something and I was like, wait, hold on. What did you just do? And I just showed what I did. And I got more mentions on Twitter about that one little tip than my entire session. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is a tip I should start sharing with people. There are going to be a whole bunch of dimensioning tips. We're going to jump in and let Donnia do some too as well. So one of the things when you're doing dimensions, and most people have seen this in their lifetime, is you've all come up here and said, hey, when I'm placing a dimension, I've got the wall center line, faces of core, etc. But very few people click this button right next to it, right? The default comes up as individual references. But one thing you can do is when you're on here, you can do entire walls. And if you do entire walls, the options come available to you. But even if you don't turn on any of these options and you click, you'll see that I can just select this wall here, oops, I think I clicked on the screen, didn't mean to grab that. But if I come over here and grab this wall, it's going to dimension the wall. I don't have to click twice. And if I just come down here and keep selecting these entire walls, oh, let me grab this wall. I got like walls and walls and walls here. So I'm almost having issues with, I might have to close out the, I'm going really, really slow. I think it's because I have the mural up. So, but you can see, I didn't have to go click each endpoint of the wall. I could just go through, select it, and it'll grab every single one of those walls and do it. It still does pick up on your wall center line versus faces of core or whatever else you're going to do there. So that's entirely up to you if you want to do that. But there are options. So one of the options on here is, hey, I want to dimension openings. Am I dimensioning to the centers or the widths? That's up to you. You can do whatever you want to do. And if I grab this wall, you can see I've now dimensioned that wall and all of the openings. Now, do understand this is an opening, so it does not pick up on curtain walls, but it does pick up on any family that technically has an opening. So your family also is using voids in lieu of openings. You're not going to get the little opening setting here. And I'll go into that in 1 second too. So the other thing on entire walls on the options is another one is intersecting grids. And I actually love this one, especially if you're a firm that does very large projects. Because one thing that's great when you say intersecting grids is a wall that will now be touching or intersecting any grid, it will dimension to. So I always tell people, if you're on a large project, and you have more than 7 grid lines, go draw some sort of random wall, right? So I'm going to go to the wall command. I'm going to go draw a random wall. I don't care what this wall is, except for it can't be a curtain wall. And now that I've drawn this random wall, I can go ahead and dimension this, go and make sure my entire walls with the grid intersections option is turned on, and boom, I literally just dimensioned every single one of those grids, right? A little bit easier than going through and click, 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 click 75 times if you've got 75 grids. Plus, you'll see if I delete the wall, the grids remain. So it's kind of my little tip how I quickly go through and start dimensioning all of those grids. Now, the other thing a lot of people don't know is if you are just dimensioning some sets here and you start looking at this, that everybody knows you can select the grids and you can hit the little equal button, but you don't have to hit the equal button to get the equal display toggle. You'll see that in the equality display in the instance properties of your dimension, you can come up here and say, hey, I just want to display the equality text. And if things are equal on the ends or all of them are equal together, it will display the equality text without actually putting on that equal constraint. So you can go through and set that up. And if it is something that you do have a whole bunch of things equality on, and I'm going to come in here and just remove one of these. I'm going to tab, I'm going to select this one, I'm going to delete it. So I don't know if everybody knows that trick. You can tab select to get one of the dimension lines, and you can delete. They added that a few releases ago. But one of the things you'll see on here, if I select this one, you can see these are all equal. Again, I could come over here to the value and say, I just want to display the equality text, and I'll say equal. Or there's also equality formula. And this is going to be looking into the type-based properties, but you can see over here, and this is great for structural engineers or for architects dimensioning stairs. And if you're MEP, I have no idea why you would use this, but hey, here you go. Then you can do how many quantity at the spacing equals whatever. So there are some type properties that you're looking for that I just showed in your dimension strings as well. So if I go to the type properties of this, one of them is there's a simple checkbox here for show opening heights. That's how I did the openings of these windows. And then you'll see if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you've got equality formula. And this is kind of like setting up a tag. If you've ever set up a tag family in Revit, you can choose what properties you want, what prefix and or suffix you want to get those to display as well. So you can go through and say, hey, that looks much cleaner to me than 5555555. Or if you're doing treads, risers, you can set one up for your dimension styles for treads and risers, etc.
For casework, I see that common, right? With your elevation duty, you want 5 equal cabinets, right?
Yep, 5 equal.
Amazing tip. We were just joking before the call, right click on everything, right? I feel like that's usually where I find my tips is just looking around. Look in the modify bar, look in the right click, look in the instance properties. What are the options Revit even gives me?
Yeah, so this is funny, Dana, because that's the tip I was going to next. So this is the one I showed in the presentation for RTC. Is I right click on a padlock, you can turn the toggle on and off. I have no idea why you would ever do that. But you can also say, I want to show the related, and it will show you what did you dimension, and it will highlight what's being dimensioned. So did you dimension the grid? Did you dimension the wall? So you can right click on any padlock. You can even right click on a padlock like the grid head extents, and it'll give you that show related. But with dimensions, you can also right click on the equal. You still get to show related. And then rather than just showing you the one piece of the string, it will start scrolling through and doing everything. Because often I get people going, man, I grabbed this grid, but the dimension didn't activate. How come that dimension isn't activating? It could be because things are pinned, etc. But a lot of times I tell people to right click on the padlock and you'll be like, oh, because you dimensioned the wall, not the grid line. So you do have right clicks on the padlocks as well as right clicks on the equal constraint as well. You can also just with the grid right click and say, hey, I want to go reset the dimension text position. So how many times have you guys accidentally moved your dimensions, right? I do it all of the time. You can just right click and say reset and it'll move your text positions back to where it goes.
How many of you guys have had to move that thing exactly to where the leader disappears? Goodness.
Yeah. And so the other thing that's great about this is you can right click on a grip. Most people don't know this. And if you right click on the controlling grip, the little witness line grip here, you can actually, instead of hitting delete and deleting the entire dimension string, you can just delete a single segment. So I can choose to come in here and just delete one of those segments. The other thing about that controlling grip that you get, your witness line grip, is if you just click it and your family is set up with center, left, or right named reference planes, you can just move that from one side of the family to the other side of the family. Would also work if we were on a wall. I'm moving it. Of course, I dimensioned a 1/2 inch thick wall, but I can move it from
That's
one
even
face
harder to grab those edges. It's really, really tough sometimes. So as long as you grab that as the host, what a great tip.
Yeah, and so a lot of times for me, like I'm dimensioning, I won't deliberately, I will not dimension, like if I'm doing the interior face and there's casework, I'll dimension to the center of the walls, because now I know I can just come back and click that grip and move it and get it to where I wanted it to go and not accidentally dimension a floor or a ceiling or a slab or whatever else. So those are my dimension tips. And we'll let Donnia hop in. Donnia, did you have anything to add to my dimension tips?
No, not right now.
I love this tag team.
Yeah, the one I would have covered, I was like, is he going to hit the reset? Yes, because that's one that's like, they hate, and I've got people that just rip it out and start over. And I'm like, well, okay. You're paid by the hour. Go
well,
ahead.
Hopefully at least they're using the entire reference, right? Yeah. Rather than the individual segment.
Yeah, I've got one that will only use individual segments because of that. I'm like, really?
Well, and the tab and select that, I wonder which release that came out on, because that I definitely did not know about when I was actually using dimensions in production. Certainly did not exist. And
so Donnia, you said somebody's doing individual dimension strings. You can also use the align command on dimension strings, but you have to grab the end of the, it's not the witness line, but the line underneath the text. I forget what they call that, but you can use the align command. So when you start grabbing I think it's called the shape handle, but when you start grabbing that, you can use the align. So like I get architects, you're like, man, I got to have these dimensions in the floor plan 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, all in the exact same location. You can draw a reference plane. Then in that reference plane, see all of views and use the align command to make sure your dimensions line up throughout the building.
Yeah.
Look at that.
I love reference planes. I totally love reference planes.
So one of the, tying back to that right clicking on the lock toggle, which is an amazing little feature there, also talked about one of the tips in the tip mural here is the reveal constraints, right? That's a really nice one. When you want to actually understand what's being constrained.
And the nice part about that too is it also shows global parameters. So I'm a big proponent of global parameters. I use them all over the place in a project. So the reveal constraints will also show you global parameters that have been associated, which is a great thing to have too.
Fantastic. Keep the tips coming, you guys. So many amazing tips coming.
Well, my biggest thing is I have been known as being the one that does a lot of families. In the past 9 years, that's what I was brought here to do. I work in a place that does kitchen design. We don't do walls, doors, floors, windows, doors, things like that. I do families most of the time. So create your own family templates. There's no reason to keep using that same family template and then going in and adding the reference planes and putting width and putting depth and putting height. And if you're using link for any one of your names or your parameters, you did not learn that from me. They're all links. You should have a width, a depth, and a height, not a width and length. When you do width and length, which way is the width going? Is it going back? Is it going left, right? Use width and depth. They are more definitive. But also create your own templates. And when I create my own templates, that I usually I've got a bunch of them here. And I usually build everything right now in 2019 because I have to go to the lowest common denominator. We're in kitchens. Who's the last one invited to the party? The structurals there, the MVPs there, you're laughing. I'm like, we're the tail end of the dog. So we have to join whatever version that building that may have been started 4 years ago. We have to join it at that point. So we're still in 19, 20, 21. I've got 23 on here, but I haven't played in it much. So we're still building back there. So I still have my templates from before. But get them to where you have your things set up and where they're recognizable. So I have family templates. If I'm going to do something that has a oven that has gas and electric, I'm going to go to this one. It's already got my electric and my gas in there. And when you set your templates up, give yourself some things that you would normally do every time you're in there. Give it to you to begin with. I have my parameters set up. I have my formulas in here for some of our custom parameters and stuff. I have this is our custom type number. So if we're working with a chain restaurant, we can have a type in there, but also give yourself some distance. If I say most of the time this is going to be 24 something, then I can go in there and I can put that in there. And as Brian and I were talking about, he came to one out and he said he'd never thought about this. Why do you still have the head of your reference level on there? Do you know where your reference level is?
It's a mystery.
It's in the way.
Donnia, I took it even farther than that because I just removed the family in general. So I removed the section head, all of those tools, because I realized that it was actually saving about 60 kilobytes of data per family. You load 6,000 families into your project. So I've purged all of that out of there. So yeah, I took it one step further than you.
Just the annotation symbol itself.
Yep, I've removed all the annotation symbols. So none of my family templates have annotation symbols anymore.
Yeah, but did you ever wonder when you're working in, let me go to okay, I'm in a front view. I'm going to draw a reference plane, create reference plane from here to here. How does it know how far back to go and how far front to go in the other view?
I know the answer, but I'll let you say it.
You've been to class before. It goes to the length of that reference line, that level line. I'm sorry, it goes along that level line. Now, how far does it go upwards when you draw one in a plan view? When you come here and you go create reference plane, I want to add another one from here to here. And when I go to the right view, how far does it go up? Damn if I know. How do you get that one figured out? Has anybody got that one yet?
There's no set in there. I thought it was view range for a while. It's just basically usually 8 feet above the level and 1 foot below.
Yeah, it's like you have no control over it whatsoever. Even if I've got my reference planes down, I've got my other ones. My reference planes are all named. They've got names. You don't have, 3 kids and they're all just like kid. No, it has, when you put something on here, it says click to name. Why not? Why not click to name your reference plane? I am such a stickler about reference planes.
Unless you're George Foreman, right?
George. Well, that's what happens when you copy the reference planes. Then you get George 1, George 2,
then you
George
just get a
3,
bunch of
George
Georges.
4.
Yeah. When you get your reference planes in there, they have directions too. When I'm in a floor plan, I draw all of my reference planes counterclockwise around the centroid of the family. That keeps the outside of the reference plane, which is, by the way, where the name shows up. It keeps it to the outside of the reference plane. So you've got an interior and an exterior face. And just a quick little thing on when would that matter? If I go here and I do create extrusion, and I'm going to set my left reference plane, and I'm just going to do a box, and I'm going to give it 2 inches. So when I go to my front view, you'll see there's a box reference. It's over there against that reference plane. But check this out. If I know I'm going to have the same thing on the other side, I can say copy, paste a line to the same place, but then I can come along and say edit your reference plane. And let's put it on the right. And because I've got a positive direction here, the outside of the reference plane is this way, positive is that way. Same thing over here. The outside is here. If you know which way your reference planes are drawn, you can use that to your advantage.
So I will point this out, Donnia.
Brian is muted. Oh, I'm sorry, Brian.
I was gonna say, because I got hosed on this in one family because I do the exact same thing. I always make the positive go to the inside for that.
Yes.
But what I found is when you host things to that, then they will host on the inside. So my toilet partition family, I kept hosting my face-based toilet accessories to it, and they kept going to the inside of the damn partition. So I kept having to hit the flip command, and it was frustrating me. Then it dawned on me one day, oh, it's the reference plane. So in my partition family, I had to reverse all of those. So just be aware that if you do it to the inside like that, which I do, you can run into a problem of face-based objects can host backwards on that family.
Yes. And the thing is, when you're in a top view, all of your extrusions and stuff, positive is to you and negative is against you. It doesn't matter which way. In a level, not a 3D view, if you're in this view, it doesn't matter if your top or your bottom reference planes, it doesn't matter where their names are. But see, I drew this one in when this way, so it came down, where if I was to draw in another reference plane this way, the name is up. So again, it's still at counterclockwise motion. And this happens when you're working inside a building, because where we come in, we get a building that comes to us. First thing I tell my people do is you draw you some reference planes on those walls and you dimension to those reference planes, because we don't trust architects. Did you let that one sink in? Because they can delete a wall and put it back with the same wall type. But if we dimension to that wall, our dimension will disappear. So we have to dimension to a reference plane. And if you don't call me. You were taught different. Even when you're in a elevation, you dimension to your reference planes that you put aligned to the wall. You want to make sure you tab to get that reference plane. And this happens whether we get CAD or Revit referencing in there, because we don't trust whoever's on the other end. That's their project. That's not ours. So we have to dimension inside of our project by using reference planes. So yes, I'm a stickler for reference planes.
Donnia, you're driving me crazy. And one thing your template doesn't have in my family templates that I do is when you draw a reference plane, by default, the is reference is weak. So in my templates, when you draw a reference plane, the default is not a reference. So if you draw your first reference plane, switch it to not a reference, draw it, then delete it. That now becomes your default setting. Because if I don't do that, when I get unexperienced Revit users, they just don't ever play with the is reference. So then you can align or dimension to 500 reference planes, and usually you only want 2 or 3. So in my family templates, the is reference has been set to not a reference in all of those. Same thing, I did originally in all my templates, and then I realized I forgot to do it for reference lines and or symbolic lines. So I've now went back to model lines, symbolic lines, and redrew all of those, switched them to be not a reference, drew them, deleted them, and saved my template. So it's not just reference planes. I do it for reference planes, reference lines, model lines, and symbolic lines as well. Because there's times where I want them, but I want to be able to turn it, not have the default all be selectable.
Yes, that's excellent. I like that. Made note of that. That's going into mine.
You're welcome. I get to rework all your templates like I did after your one presentation to get rid of all the annotation symbols.
You just make work for each other, it sounds like. So what do you got? Why don't you go back to sharing? Let me get out of here a bit. There you go.
I'm gonna tag team onto yours, and it was funny because it actually just came up yesterday, not yesterday, it was this week or last week, recently. Let me change my words there to directionality. So somebody had actually posted in the Autodesk questions in the knowledge forum saying, hey, sometimes when I place this object, it gets placed sideways or upside down or whatever. And I think I actually still have it in my Snagit editor. So I'm gonna go see if I can open up my Snagit editor. I think I still saved the screen capture. Of course not. That would have made way too much sense. But what I was trying to say is that I'm just gonna come in here and I'm gonna come over here and draw 2 new grids. I'm gonna draw 1 grid going this way and 1 grid going this way, right? We all hate this because then you see users going, oh, the grid head's on the wrong side in every single view. So don't do this. Don't draw your grids the opposite direction. I am just doing this to explain what I was talking about here. So the reason why I want to do this is if I go ahead and load in a family, I'm going to load in one of the few face-based families that I have in my library. But the directionality of everything. So Donnia talked about her reference planes having the positive size. It's not only reference planes, it's grids, it's levels, it's honest truth. You're going to find out it's sketch lines as well. So if you're sketching lines within a floor and you draw some of them clockwise and some of them counterclockwise, and structural engineers will probably know what I'm talking about here. When you get into that and you do that, then you start using the cantilever values in overhangs for your floor objects. When you do that, sometimes it'll go inside and sometimes it'll go outside, and you're going to be like, what is going on here? So you can kind of see, if I look at this, one went that direction and one went this direction. And if I do it from 3D, they're over here. You can kind of see that this one is still, you know, pointing up and down, and this one's pointing up and down. But if I go place it in 3D and I go say, give me a work plane, and let me grab grid V, which should be here, and then let me grab grid W here. Maybe it's a different family, but sometimes the families will even rotate. So depending on how your face-based family is set up, I've seen these depending on the directionality of the reference plane, the grid, the sketch mode in something, you can start running into these things getting rotated. So every single thing in Revit has directionality to it, is what I like to say. So I've got a little, and I've done a presentation, I think it was AU, but if not, it was Built, Midwest U, a whole bunch of them, where I literally drew a rectangular family. And I drew those sketch lines doing a rectangle from top left to bottom right, bottom left to top right. And then I sketched each line different directions. And then I went through and I started hosting elements to it, face-based elements, and they all rotated different directions just because of the directionality of my sketch lines. So Donnia talked about having, you know, all of the little reference planes in your families. It's everything. So when I'm creating content and I'm creating that extrusion, I draw all my lines the same direction. I don't draw some going up and down and left and right and diagonal or whatever. I pick a directionality, clockwise, counterclockwise, whatever, in every single thing I do. Filled regions and detail components, lines and extrusions, profiles, whatever it's going to be, I'm always drawing that stuff the same direction for that thing. I've also had issues where Donnia talked about the positive and negative side, where sometimes on your solids, you do a negative, the rendered image will flip. So I had a TV, I kept putting a rendered image on my TV. It was actually a monitor in a surgical room, and it was flipping the heart. I didn't really care. It's a heart, you can't really tell, but somebody said, you realize that heart's backwards. I'm like, it's this image. Like, no, it's right in the image. It's backwards in your Revit model. So the images, and like I've done the same TV I was using for airports and making little like airport display boards, and all the text was coming in backwards. That was because that extrusion, instead of like Donnia said, had the positive side going there, somebody put a negative value on it. So the extrusion start was 0 and the extrusion end was a -2 inches. And that actually flips the material. So everything in Revit has a directionality. Understand that as you're going through, and try to start limiting some of what you're doing to keep that directionality doing what you need it to do. So I'm gonna add to that one you had, Donnia, and then I'm gonna come back over here to my little document I have up here.
Well, while you're doing that, can I jump in on the directionality?
Yeah, go for it.
Real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. If you are, okay, there we go. If you, I just did this a few minutes ago. I did a community conversation thing. But if you're working with a wall and you grab your location line, core, exterior, when you do it with a wall, if you go in a clockwise position, it keeps the exterior to the outside. Reference planes, if you go counterclockwise, it keeps the negative to the outside. So it's like, you got to figure out which way you want to go. But also with walls, if you're drawing a wall with one line, and then you go, and let's grab this and change this to finish face exterior. It depends, even on the same line, you know, you can get this to change. Did you realize that you can change which one it's on, if that matters to you? People will take them out. Oh, I forgot to draw it on the face of core. Well, why don't you just change it to the face of core? You can change it to your core face exterior. It doesn't move the wall, but it will let you go in there and get it. And when you're trying to align walls, it will automatically align to, all of a sudden a line moved to me. It automatically wants to align to the finished face of the core. That's a reveal that's sticking out there. It's just not there. Our finished face of the exterior, finished face of the interior, and it will want to align to core. You can get to your core center by doing a tab, and then come over here and do a tab and align those core centers up. But yeah, when you're doing your walls and stuff, it does matter which way you're going, but also your location line can be changed so that you have it lined up to where you want. A lot of people didn't realize it. I had people that used to change this. They used to go and delete it because they just picked the wrong location line. Just pick the right location line, or not change it. All right.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that. If you are going to adjust the value or the definition of a wall, I had a client, they're like, oh, we're going from a 2-inch air gap to a 3-inch air gap, or 1-inch rigid insulation to 3. They just went into the wall definition and changed it. Half their walls moved to the inside, half the walls moved to the outside. The next 2 days they spent moving all of their walls. Had they done a select all instances, changed all those walls to be core exterior, then adjusted the rigid insulation thickness, not a single one of those walls would have moved. So since they had summit finish face exterior, core interior, finish face interior, whatever it was, the walls all shifted in the project, or they were cussing out Revit, saying Revit's a stupid program, blah, 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 blah. And it was kind of like, yeah, you could have done select all instances, changed it, and then you would have been done.
Yep. All right, tag.
So the other one I have is, this is a very, very, very simple one, and I call this the Nonclaw. And every time I say this, I think of Jim Carrey in, I think it's Liar Liar, but he's like, the claw. Oftentimes, there's two tips I want to show here. Oftentimes, I see people zoom in because they're trying to not get the add elbow button or not get this button, and so then they grab the grip, and then they're trying to scroll with their mouse doing the claw, right? Did you know if you actually take it when you have a grip on any line-based option off the screen and let go of your mouse, I can now pan and zoom, and notice my fingers are not holding that button down anymore. So now I can pan and zoom, and it's going to go ahead and move with it. So anytime you have that, you can drag it off the screen, pan, zoom, not forcing yourself to do the claw, then click where you want it to go, and you're done, right? The other tip I have to this, and this is more of a Revit tab, right? We all tab to get like chains of walls, right? We've all done tab, cycle through elements. Nobody ever does it for grips. I don't ever zoom in to find that grip. If I hover over this, you can see right now, it's telling me add elbow. I hit the tab key, I'm gonna get, oh, grab the model in. Hit the tab key again, I'm gonna get, oh, edit the parameter. Tab key again, switch to 2D extents, right? So you can use the tab key to even cycle through grips before you grab them. So you don't have to drag it on the screen, you just, do it first. And now it'll allow you to move those objects first. So that's kind of another one too. It's a simple one. And again, it doesn't work only for just like grids or levels. If I drew a wall here and I'm like, man, I needed to zoom in here, I'm gonna grab this grip and I wanna move the wall, take the grip off the screen, release. Now on my hands, I'm hands-free. I can move this around and start going across. This is invaluable if your mouse dies and you have to use a touchpad, because trying to do that on touchpad is impossible. Did a presentation that way and people saw me do it, I'm going, oh my God, how did you do that? That is pretty cool. Now, the other thing I always want to talk about in here, and I'm just going to go draw a series of very stupid, very poorly drawn walls, is everybody knows we can grab the beautiful chain command, right? So we can come in here, grab a series of walls, and if I hover over this and hit the tab key, I can grab every single wall. But what if I only wanted to grab these 4 walls, right? In this case, there's nothing there. I can use a crossing window. It's a terrible example. But what if something else is going on? Did you know you could select one of those, hover over one on the other side and hit the tab key? That will grab a chain of objects. If I had my mouse on the other side of this wall, it's going to grab them between the 2 distances from the side of the object you're on. For those of you who are in the MEP world, you're the reason we have this. So if you don't know this in the MEP world, we have this because of you. When they came out with Revit MEP, Revit systems back in the day, you needed to select, oh, all these light fixtures to put them on this circuit, but these light fixtures or outlets or whatever are going to be on that circuit. So rather than doing a crossing window or doing it, you could literally grab one light fixture, tab, do it, and it would grab the fixtures between on that wire so you could circuit it. So that's a huge one to me too. I see people, doing cross, tab, select, oh crap, wrong thing, deselect everything, because they also don't realize that they can. Did you also know you can just hold control and shift down? And notice my cursor says add or remove. So I don't have to think, oh, control is add, shift is remove. Just hold them freaking both down. If it's not there, it'll add it. If it is there, it'll take it away. So hold control and shift down, and you can do that. Now, the other thing that I use quite often, and this one drives me crazy, is let's say I wanted to come in here and I needed to do something to these windows, but I don't want to go control in these windows. So I'm just going to do this selection, right? I think I'm moving something. Oops, cancel that. I didn't mean to select something, then move. Oh, I'm grabbing the roof that's sitting up there because my select by face is on. I never have that on. Terrible command. So I'm going to come over here and grab all these objects, right? But I'd have to go through, and most people will go up to the filter. And you're still going to need to use the filter if you plan on deleting those objects. But if you just want to change the properties, use the properties filter. Properties has a filter right here where I can see the properties of just those windows. Oh, I needed to change the sill height to be 3 feet. I didn't have to control, or do a giant crossing window and filter, right? If I'm just changing a property, I have the capability to just use the properties dropdown. The other one that I see every single user do and drives me crazy, let's say, hey, I need to go draw a new wall, but I want to go to the type selector for this wall and choose one that I just recently used, but it wasn't the last one I used. Nobody ever looks at the bottom of their type selector to see these are your recent objects. I see people then going, oh crap, the last one I used was that storefront wall all the way down here. So like scrolling forever and a day to get to it, right? And in a real project, we got about 500 wall types, or God forbid it's a detail item. We scroll forever and a day, but yet the one I wanted was literally right there. So I don't even have to scroll and look. I can just be like, hey, I grabbed that. I changed it to be what I needed it to be. So again, those are some more of those things I watch people do that I just cringe going, man, you people really love scrolling. I hate scrolling. So kind of get rid of some of those anti-scroll tips I've got there. All right, Donnia, what do you got?
Why don't you go ahead with something else? I'm trying to open up something for a schedule thing.
Okay.
It really
Let's
drives me
see that.
crazy when you can't find things easily within the drop downs in Revit. Like, for example, a legend component selection. Why? Why is it so difficult? You know, and you can't really use the search command either because it's looking for the beginning of the text, right? Like it's just not ideal in those scenarios.
So I don't know if you do this, Dana. For me, honest truth, I rarely use commands. I rarely use 2-key shortcuts. The reason why is if you go into your families and you drag and drop from the project browser, so you said legend component, I can come down here to door tags. This is my annotation symbols and drag and drop into a legend. I'm placing the legend component. So I don't have to go into the annotate tab, go to the component command, find my legend component, legend component down here, and then attempt to scroll through this crappy dialog box, or actually it's not even there, it's up here, I forget. All right, scroll through this crappy little interface. God no, and there is no search in here. I just drag and drop.
Yeah, it's silly.
So,
I think it recognizes the first letter. You know, if you type in S or something,
Yes.
it takes you to the S's, but that's really it.
But that doesn't work for me because all my legend stuff either start with S for symbols, T for tags, or D for datum elements. So typing an S just takes me to 1 of 500.
Exactly. Right.
So yeah, so even here, like I don't use the wall command most often. I mean, we're in a small presentation, but in a real project, there's 500 walls in the project. I come down here to walls, I find the basic wall I want. And again, if you drag and drop, you started the wall command. You still have your options bar up here. You have this. So for me, project browser is about dragging and dropping. I use it more for that probably than actually opening views.
Yeah.
So my other tip here, since Donnie was opening something, is let's say I have a wing of a building and this wing of my building is at some weird angle, like 12 degrees, right? So sure, I can draw my first wall in here. I can come put this wall at 16 degrees. And then hope to God, every time I draw something else, I'm at that 16-degree angle. This is one that I use all of the time. Nobody ever turns on the work plane grid, right? It's annoying. It's irritating. Here's the work plane grid. When I draw things, I can snap to the work plane grid. That's a terrible thing. If you're an old AutoCAD user, right, first thing we do is turn off snaps. But what people don't know is if I take this work plane grid and I rotate it 16 degrees, and now I draw a wall, my orthogonal is that work plane grid. So if I'm drawing a building that's got a wing at 16 degrees, a wing at 30 degrees, I set up 3 separate floor plans because I don't want to keep rotating it. And I have one that's wing A, wing B, wing C. And now notice I'm drawing orthogonal. I'm not getting perpendicular. I'm not getting parallel. I can even hold the shift key down for orthogonal, and I'm literally getting orthogonal to that. But if I want to go back and draw orthogonal the other way, I just turn the work plane grid off. Now I can draw grids, levels, walls, floors, whatever, and now I'm orthogonal again. Again, go show it, it remembers that setting. So I can toggle the angle of my building and just get this and not have somebody draw one at a 15-degree angle, and now I'm doing parallel to the stupid 15-degree angle, and I got a whole bunch of crap that won't dimension.
That is amazing. I did not know about that, and I'm guessing that's old. That's been there forever, I'm guessing.
Well, I started in Revit 7, and it's been there. I know it was there in Revit 7. It wasn't quite this easy to do this, but yes, it's always been there, and to my knowledge.
I always default to this rotated scope boxes, right? And setting your views to that. Do you have a preference over one or the other? I guess this is better because it's project, right? The work plane for your project is now set this way.
Yeah, well, this is per view. It's not even project. So this is per
okay.
view. So again, if I I had one client doing a building where his wing over here was 20 degrees, and on this side coming off the main building was 30. So we had main, wing A, wing B, and we just had 3 separate floor plans we worked in. Yes, you're going to need to rotate the scope box or crop region to get it to happen. But I like to see my building all in one floor plan, not rotated. So I personally like this. I also, as a tip, if you grab the work plane, you can get rid of the grid spacing because I don't really need this. So usually I go make it something ridiculous like 1,000. Just so basically there is no work plane grid for me to snap to. I've got one place to snap right here, but now I can just draw without having to worry about accidentally snapping to a work plane grid if somebody had that turned on. Okay, Donnia, did you get your file open?
Yes, I had to figure out which one had the stuff in it.
I love all of the content files. A million of those floating around.
Yeah, we all have a file that shows exactly what we need. It's just finding that file. That's the thing.
Which version did I have open? Because I don't get to work in just one version. So one of the things that we do, because of the equipment stuff that we do, we have things that aren't programmed into the families. And some of them may be the height of your input for your water, your electrical outlet, things like that. So we set we have working schedules and we have print schedules. And in our working schedules, we've set these values so that we have under formatting, we have conditional statements. So when I come down to hot water size, my conditional formatting says that if hot water size equals 0, then color it pink. And therefore it just gives them a prompt that you need to put something in here. And when you slide over, our electrical is green, and if we had mechanical, it would be blue, but that also corresponds with our floor plans, because if I'm in an electrical and I show a working, I don't have anything electrical. I've got one thing electrical here, or a couple things electrical. All of our electrical highlights green in our working view templates, because that just prompts our people, you need to put, this is not a project, I'm building a library, so I'm just putting things in here. So this is, they're prompted to put an electrical outlet with anything that's green. If you go into the plumbing, we have in slab and above slab, but everything that is pink has plumbing with it. So you're prompted then to do that. So then when we go and we set this up for, instead of a working, we can go for a plumbing above slab print. Everything goes to black the way it should be. But then when it comes to having all this in our schedules, you don't want all these colors and stuff. This is a working schedule. You don't want the color stuff, but we also don't want all those zeros in our print schedules. So when we come down here to a print equipment utility schedule, all those zeros disappear because we're not using the height AFF. It's rough in height. What we're using in here is, if I go into fields, I have taken my cold water size, but I've made a formula field here. If I edit this, cold water size is, if cold water size equals 0, then we've got a parameter that's called empty length, and it's project parameter, and it's set, you don't set it to anything, so it's blank. And it says if cold water size is 0, to put the empty length in. If not, put cold water size in there. And empty length is also included. We have empty length, gas, amps, phase, volts, and watts for our different types. So if you go up here to amps, you'll see my amps parameter, but then you'll see a formula field in here that says if amps is 0, empty amp, else put the amps in there. And we do this on everything that you could have a dimension to. A lot of them, like when it comes to your rough-in height, they all use the same thing. It's one called empty length. Length is just anything that could be inches and stuff. And that's another thing. We work in inches, so working in architectural plans, I have to rethink things for a while. It took me about 2 months to get used to using nothing but inches when I got here, but all of our equipment is in, well, it's a 60-inch stove, a 54-inch stove, a 48-inch stove, whatever, it's all in inches. So everything that we do is set in inches, but that is a way that we can use color in both our plans through our working views and in our working schedules. We can use it to prompt them to say, hey, you got something here that needs to be filled out. Sometimes it may be the parameter was in there, we just didn't take it out. It wasn't used. So we can do that also. But that has helped tremendously to prompt them to say, you need to put something in here because these heights may change. Your indirect waste number will have to be added no matter what to every project. But it's also, because as soon as they put something in, it goes away. The color goes away. So that has helped tremendously to be able to check yourself with these colors. And we have the same color. It's pink is plumbing, green is electrical, blue is mechanical. So anything with HVAC stuff like that, which would include our hoods, would be turning blue. So that has been useful to especially get our new people in there. So that's my big tip on some of these things. And it's not too difficult to do after you add those project parameters for you add the project parameters in. You don't have to set them to anything, just have to assign them to your whatever type of families you're using. And then you can just use them to replace that in your print. And it's a lot cleaner look on the, instead of sending out a schedule with all these zeros on it and making architects and engineers nuts. So what you got? You got something to wind up with Brian?
Sorry if I'm a little spotty, you guys. My
I was gonna say, I think Dana's got
internet's a little bad.
Yeah, Dana's got to hop out, so we got to let her close this thing up.
But there is a question in the chat that is driving me crazy, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but you cannot use totals in calculations within Revit, correct? Like a
yes and no.
quantity.
Yes and no. You can't use the counts, but you could just define one that says 1, but you can also use the counts of things, but you have to do a weird 3-step process where you've got to change it to the sorting and grouping, figure out what percentage of that sorting and grouping it is to do it all. So I forget who it was. It might have been Snowy Western or something, and the Revit forums posted it like 10 years ago.
Cat. Yeah. We'll post that with you. Yes, there's definitely a way that you can find percentages of totals, but not necessarily, like Brian is saying, there's a cheat. But I appreciate everybody for joining. I will say we have so many tips on the mural that it is going to take us some time to pick one. So please tune back next month. We will, in the mural, not only give away the $25 gift card for the person who shared their location, but we'll also give away the Dell laptop to the tip. So please, I see some tips in there without names. Make sure that you put your name with your tip. Okay. If they're not Donnia's, make sure that you put your name with it so that you can actually get the laptop if in fact we choose that as the winner. But make sure you come and join us next time. Thank you so much for participating this month in our 2-year anniversary of BIMxt. Thank you so much, Kate, who had to drop off, Brian and Donnia for presenting today. Make sure you connect with them on LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. They have amazing information to share, as of course you saw today. So
and
hopefully
I am going to do a shameless
plug at the conference coming up. Please
Dana,
do.
I do want to do a shameless plug on Revit Radio. So there was a lot of questions that came up that we might not have got answered. I do a monthly webcast. It is in the mural on the left on my name where you ask questions and I answer them. It's called Revit Radio. I've been doing it since, God, I think 2005. So if you have any questions, you just log in, you ask them, I answer them. It's a monthly webcast. So feel free to come in. There's a whole bunch of questions that popped up here that I don't think we got to, and I'll absolutely follow up and get into those there as well. Otherwise, thanks everyone for the hard work behind the scenes, Dana and everyone else.
And let me plug
Absolutely. I shared that link in the chat so everybody can get to it. And it, once again, is in the mural. Make sure you check out both Donnia, Brian, and of course, Kate's information to link up to them. and check out their information. Brian will be giving a presentation next month. We will not be meeting at BIMxt. We will come back and join in July. So thank you all for joining. Donnia, you have last words?
I was just going to say, if you check out the Autodesk Community Conversations and Autodesk Community Voices, the Voices is a blog, and I've been posting on there quite a bit. And I've been doing monthly conversations for a little over a year. I had a whole big series on families. I've branched out. Today's was walls, breaking down walls. But there's a lot of information on community conversations out there as well.
And I have also recently become an author on there. So you'll see my posts
Yes.
on Dynamo. So I
Yeah.
will share the link to that as well. Thank you guys all so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.